So let's talk about file size. When you deal with the CT scans, the file size is one of the things that can make things a little bit difficult because CT scans are in 3D, so the files can be pretty big. And then when you try to do segmentation or quantitative analysis, if the file is 20, 30, 100 gigabytes, then all calculations can take a long time. So there are times that you might want to reduce the file size. So that's what I'm going to show you how to do using ImageJ. But before we actually do that, let's take a look at how the file size is determined. If you have a cube that has 1000 pixels for XYZ directions, and if the image is saved in a 16-bit grayscale, then the file size is going to be 1000 times 1000 times 1000 times 16 bits, and that's 16 billion divided by 8 bytes, and that is approximately 2 billion bytes or 2 gigabytes, which is not too big, but this is how the file size is determined. And this means that to reduce the file size, you're gonna reduce one of those numbers. Okay, so let's take a look at an example in ImageJ. So I'm gonna open this original image, and this one is about 200 megabytes, which is not too big, but I'm gonna use this relatively small one to make this calculation quick. Okay, so this is a CT scan of a piece of rock, and it's a stack. You can see here 420 slices in this. Okay, and for this scan you can see that the contrast of different phases in this rock is pretty good. Let me adjust it. So image, adjust brightness, contrast. So you can see that there are pretty dark phase and light phase, and they're looking pretty different. In this case, you might not need a 16-bit depth. You can reduce this to 8-bit. So let's do that as one step. I'm going to go to image, go to type. The original is a 16-bit. I'm going to reduce it to 8-bit. Okay, now you see that it doesn't look any different. So I'm going to save this one in TIFF format as 8-bit version. We're going to compare the sizes later. Actually, let me save it here. Okay, so that's a 16-bit to 8-bit reduction. Another thing we could do is first couple slices are kind of partial. You don't have this part of the rock. You see the same thing towards the end. So let's say that I don't need first couple 10s or 20 slices. So I can just cut them. And to do that, you go to Image, Stacks. This is kind of deep, but I'm gonna go to Tools, then make Substack. And type in, let's see, maybe 20 to maybe 390 should do it. And make a Substack. So this Substack does not have those partial images. So that's a little bit of a reduction. And what I want to do with this data is to calculate the volume fraction of different phases. And to do that, I don't really care about this air outside of the rock. So let me further crop this to maybe this box. And then when you do this, make sure that you go through all slices and check that this box looks good for all of them. And if it looks good, you can go to Image, Crop, to crop it like this. Now let's save this one as a cropped file. Again in TIFF format. So this is a cropped Substack. Okay, so that's even smaller than an 8-bit file. Okay. Now, if you have to reduce the file size even further than this, you can do binning and downsize it. When you do this, be aware that you're going to lose the original integrity of the resolution because you're going to bin multiple pixels. But you can do it if you need to. So I'm going to go to Image and Adjust and Size. So we have 285 pixels wide image. Let's say I'm gonna reduce this about half of it. Then it becomes smaller, but let's zoom in. So the image looks a little bit pixelated because I downsized it, but still you can see different phases, so this might work. So let's save this one as further reduced version. This is the downsized one. Okay. Usually you don't need to get to this point, but as you can see, there are many different ways to reduce the file size. And if you ever have to reduce the file size even further, you can switch from TIFF to something like JPEG. Again, TIFF is a lossless format, meaning that you don't lose anything when you save the image in TIFF. But if you save this in JPEG, the image will be compressed, meaning that you will lose the original integrity of the image. But you can do it actually just by simply going to File, go to Save As, and go to JPEG. But again, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but if you need to, that's another step you can take. Now let's take a look at the files we just created. Let me sort this in the size order. So the original image was about 200 megabytes. When you change that to 16-bit to 8-bit, it becomes about a half of it. And we also cropped it and deleted some of the slices that reduced it from 107 to 25. Then when we did the binning to downsize it, it went down to 8 megabytes. So those are the different things you can do to reduce the file size. Again, I hope this is helpful for you, and thank you for watching.